And we're live. I'm Mahabeli from the American University in Cairo, in Egypt, and I'm here for Virtually Connecting. We're virtually connecting with the Digital Pedagogy Lab Institute in Fredericksburg, Virginia, and I'm going to go to the on-site folks to introduce themselves very quickly, and then we'll introduce the virtual folks, and then we're going to ask you guys how your first event has been going so far. Go ahead.
Hey, I'm Autumn Keynes. I'm the virtual buddy for this session along with Jim Luke.
I'm Jim Luke, aka Econ Prof, and I'm the virtual on-site buddy for my first time.
And Jim really helped us out with all of setting up all of this equipment, but I'm so excited to be here with these wonderful folks. I met Angela and Heather last year, and they just really stuck out in my mind. It's like, I'm so glad that I met them as a part of that experience. And I've been following Laura on Twitter and communicating for a while now. So I'll let them introduce themselves. But yeah, just really excited to be here with you all.
I'm Angela. I'm Angela Benson from the University of Alabama. This is my second digital pedagogy lab, and my first virtually connecting. So I'm looking forward to it.
Hi, I'm Heather Pleasance, and I also work at the University of Alabama. And I teach a little bit, but mostly I run a program that focuses on experiential learning for undergraduates. And I'm a soon-to-be podcaster.
Hi, everyone. I'm Laura Taub Purvis-Poor. I am a professor and an associate dean for digital learning at Muhlenberg College in Allentown, Pennsylvania. And it's great for the three of us to be here doing this, and with Autumn and Jim too. We were last year together in the digital pedagogy track that Maha and Kate Bowles convened. So it's a reunion.
Yeah. It does feel like a reunion, and I miss you guys so much. And I thought to start off the introductions, I'll ask George and Rami to introduce themselves first, because they were also in our track. And then I'll ask everyone else to introduce themselves. So go ahead, George.
Okay, hi, I'm George Station. I'm a lecturer at Cal State Monterey Bay, and the Monterey area on the former Fort Ord used to be an Army base. Now we are an undergrad university, swords into plowshares and all of that kind of stuff. I'm here today with my first year seminar class. It's a first year seminar 156, which is has a technology and society theme and meets a social science general education requirement. And if the class would just say hello to everybody. Hi. So, and we may have a few questions later. I know there is at least one romance author on site, and we have some romance fans in the room. So we'll catch up with that when we get to the questions. I'm going to go back to mute now so Rami and everybody can introduce themselves.
Hey everybody, my name is Rami Kalir. I'm an assistant professor at the University of Colorado in Denver. It is just such a pleasure to see so many friends and old comrades from our lovely track last year at the Digital Pedagogy Lab. Despite not being in Fredericksburg today, I am somehow facilitating a workshop at DPL tomorrow. I'll be doing so virtually. So if you want to hang out and do a little bit of reading and online writing and some annotation work, I will be facilitating one of tomorrow's DPL workshops. All the information's online. It's really great to be here. I hope everybody is well. I'm looking forward to today's conversation.
Hello, everyone. I am Aras Bozkurt from Anadolu University, Turkey. I am happy to virtually connect with you all. See you during the conversation.
Merhaba.
Hi, everyone. Oh, hello. So, hi, everyone. I'm Janae Cohn. I'm an academic technology specialist at Stanford University. I work with faculty and students on thinking about ways we can responsibly incorporate digital learning into our pedagogy. So this is my first virtual connecting, but I've been following DPL and all these conversations from afar. So I'm just thrilled to be able to join in from California and get to be in conversation with all of you in Virginia and all over the world.
Hi, I'm Sue Beckingham from a city called Sheffield in the United Kingdom, so way across the pond. Hi, Autumn, in the background. So I work in departments of computing. Very interested, my research interests in the use of social media for learning and teaching. And I'm just fascinated to be able to join this online conversation every time that I do it. I've not done that many, but each one has always been a fantastic learning experience. So it's great to meet everybody.
Okay. Hi, I'm Sherry Spelitz, and I am an elementary physical education specialist. I'm thrilled to be with you with the digped lab. I was a fellow in Vancouver last year, and sad that I couldn't be here this time, but hoping to bring the lab to Vienna soon. So really excited to be with you all. Thanks.
Yes, and retired Colorado, but rural, not Denver. And I'm a guerrilla informationist. And before you start typing it out, just I'm going to put it in the sidebar.
Hi, I'm Fuji Lozada. I'm Associate Dean of Faculty here at Davidson College. I am not a DPL. I'm a DPL noob, so I'm looking forward to hearing the conversations.
Okay, thank you, everybody. And so my understanding is the Digital Pedagogy Lab is slightly different this year in that the first day is like 1-day tracks that you do over the day, and then there's a keynote in 20 minutes. So I wonder if you guys could give us like your reflections on how the first day has been for you on site, and then virtual folks step in and ask questions whenever.
Well, the three of us were also just in a workshop together on imagination, which was a really wonderful continuation of a theme that Sean introduced in his opening remarks this morning. And I'll just share with you, if you haven't seen the video from this morning or the slides, he quoted Maxine Greene, the late educational philosopher queen at Teachers College, and he quoted her in saying that imagination is the ability to think that the world may be otherwise, to be able to look at the distance between the way the world is currently and the way the world might be. And so the three of us got to spend the rest of the day exploring imagination in education, imagining our classrooms, the spaces of education where we spend our time, as spaces for fostering imagination, spaces for creating conditions for people to actually be able to think otherwise in order to act otherwise.
Well, I was sort of the same way today. And this is the one thing that I love about the lab. I go to a session on inspiration. I leave the session changing the entire syllabus for my class. Now, maybe I didn't change the entire syllabus, but you know, it is what you want it to be. You know, we talked about inspiration and changing the world, and I thought about inspiration and changing my class. So what do I do to help my students engage better with each other and with me? And somebody in the session said something along the lines of, why don't you tell them what you're trying to do in your syllabus? And you're thinking, whoa, isn't that a powerful idea? And so we look at this syllabus as this contract document, but it can also be a personal document where I share with you why I'm doing the things why we're doing the things that we're doing in this class. And then you get to reflect on that through the semester, and hopefully it'll help the semester go better for the student. But that's why I love the lab, that I get to sit in sessions and have my life changed.
That's amazing. Go ahead, Heather.
So what she said, really, I think that encapsulates kind of how I feel as well. In about a week and a half, I will be working with 9 faculty from our institution who are redesigning or designing courses to incorporate experiential learning more significantly into the course. And we start with a big dream. What is your big dream for what you would like your students to accomplish in the course? And we start there because it's important to dream big at the beginning and to kind of set your compass by that big dream. What today's session really helped me think about for that workshop is, what are the practical things that people need to keep in mind that are the outcomes? We might call them student learning outcomes, or maybe just outcomes for you as a faculty member. What are the outcomes? What are the obstacles? Sometimes I don't like to address the obstacles. I feel like we're going to stay in a play space. We're not going to think about that. But it's really important because those are the things that will help, that will prevent you from being able to reach your goal. And then understanding, what does it look like when it's successful, right? So Naomi took us through a process. And we got to specify what our goal or wish was and go through that really, really simple process. And like Angela, I'm like, okay, we're going to do that in our workshop because it's so, at the same time, contextually and conceptually rich, but also immediately applicable, both for the work that we do and also in our own experiences. So that was really powerful.
And I'll just add that you can get a taste for the process that Naomi DeLatour took us through. It's called WOOP, W-O-O-P, and it stands for Wish, Outcome, Obstacles, and Plan. And there's an app for it. It's called WOOP My Life. And I think for the first year
so cool.
class, it would be awesome to do this for first year students.
Yeah,
I was just about to ask if there are online resources that we can use, so I'm glad that it's an app. George, do you have a question from your class?
Yeah, I will lead with one, but obviously if we have time, get the students in on it too. But the first one I think is, what does anyone want to say about the value of the way a lot of us have built our personal learning networks, as opposed to what we usually think of as professional career building and so on? Because I think a lot of us have built our networks in a little bit different way that we usually don't talk about. Our career development person is actually in the room with us, and it was a pre-scheduled presentation, and they are great friends of ours and always visit my first year class. So I think they'd be interested as well in either the on-site folks or anybody else, I guess, who wants to address that aspect of network building as we do it.
Digital Pedagogy Lab is about the relationships that you build here. Within minutes of arriving this morning, there were hugs and cups of coffee to get caught up. And, having just met people here once, but then continued to stay connected via Twitter. You stay connected because you care about the people and the stories that they share here. Learning about the challenges that Heather and Angela have in their work settings inspires me and helps me rethink some of the things that I'm approaching at my own institution. So I guess I would say that networks often sounds just very professionalized, very kind of neutral and pragmatic. But these are real relationships, and so I would encourage first-year students to think about their personal network as relationships that have room for you as a whole person, not just your interests professionally or in terms of your learning and career.
I'd agree with that, and probably also add that it can be scary to meet new people sometimes. Mm-hmm. Because no matter where you are in your professional life, everyone has insecurities about not knowing enough, or what is this person going to say if I ask them this question and they ask me something and I don't know. or, you know, what if they're busy, or they must have so much other work that they have to do. But if you make the time to reach out and talk to someone about their work or about something that you're excited about, and it seems that they're excited in the same thing, you'll be amazed at what will happen and at the connections that can be made. And once you have that connection, like I was saying, you can build on it. And then it makes the virtual connections even stronger. So don't be afraid to start with a face-to-face connection, and then build on that through social media.
One thing I was in Maha session last year, as Laura said, and I think meeting people here and everywhere, I don't know if it makes the world smaller or if it makes the world larger. But then Maha and I met in another context. And even though we had only been together for a week and did a little bit of tweeting, I used to say twittering, but I'm getting better. I was able to, in this other setting that we're in, this other context, I felt like I knew Maha so well that I was able to match her up as a partner with someone else that I knew. And I knew that they would be natural sisters, even though they had never met each other, but I had met both of them. And I just find that fascinating, that it didn't take 7 years for that relationship to develop. It was over a very short time. So you can be building networks for the future that you don't even know about by just talking to people. By talking to one person, that can spread to like hundreds of people. And I don't know what Maha and my friend are gonna do together, but I'm telling you,
a really good match. I couldn't believe the first time she and I met, because we'd never met at all, and we were expected to work together, and I was kind of worried about that. But I think you're completely right. I think you matched us perfectly. We think the same way. We have a different background. And like knowing that, like just on paper, I wasn't really sure, but yeah, obviously you knew us both well enough to do that match. So yeah, I agree.
Yay!
I see that it doesn't always happen right away. So I think about my connection with Angela, actually. Angela was the editor on a book that was really my first piece of real professional writing out there. It was a book chapter that I wrote for. I really just knew her by name and by a couple of emails. I did Google her, so I sort of knew what she looked like at the time. But then it turned out that she was coming to DPL last year, and we actually got to connect. And I feel like we built more of a relationship over those kind of things. But that first initial, if I would have just written that off, right? If I would have been like, whatever, just forget about that person, right? But kind of like just remembering you and being able to reconnect with you. So sometimes it doesn't happen right away. Sometimes you got to give it a little time. So one thing that I do want to point out is that we have 10 minutes until the keynote, and they did warn us that it was going to be packed. And so
okay, so I want to ask just one quick question before you guys go, and then we can continue the virtual conversation, and if George has questions for his class or whatever. I know Angela and Heather are doing a workshop together, right? That's still later?
No, now it's just Heather's workshop.
What happened?
That would have to go for another virtually connecting.
But she's going to give me feedback on the workshop. So yes, we'll talk about that when we do more virtually connecting through the Twitter sphere. No big deal, no issues.
Well, tell me about the workshop.
Okay, so the workshop. Right, okay, so the workshop.
His eyes are so big.
Okay, so I've done the workshop before. It's called Technology Playgrounds, and it's a workshop that's built around bringing people together from different disciplines to, in the span of probably 15 to 20 minutes, to create a class. These are people that don't know each other. They don't know each other's disciplines. And I give them maybe 5 or 6 technology tools or apps that they have to draw out of a cup. And they have to use those apps and tools and each other's knowledge and interests to create a class in 20 minutes that addresses a real world problem that crosses borders. And they can define borders however they want to define them. And it's sort of competition based because people like competition. So the class that most people think they would like to take is the winner. But because the classes that are developed, I'm telling you, are amazing. And you wouldn't think that people would, you know, be able to create this in 20 minutes. They don't know each other. They don't even know how to use the apps most of the time. They're like, what is this app? And I say, Google it. And they're like, okay. And they look it up and they're like, oh, we could do this and we could do that. And so they have to present their class creatively to the group at the end. And really, it's kind of a way to backdoor discussions about creativity and play within the process of designing courses and thinking about pedagogy. Because a lot of times we foreground the tool as if that's the thing, but it's not the thing. It's just a tool to accomplish the thing. And the real thing is authentic, engaging learning for everybody. So if you are talking to anybody virtually about the workshop, don't tell them what we're going to be doing. Because it's actually a surprise.
Don't tweet it out. Don't tweet it out. Okay.
Right.
All right. We won't tweet it out. It's live on the internet, but people at DPL are probably not watching. Because they're heading to the keynote, right?
Nobody uses the internet.
Only a million people will know.
I feel like just in these 25 minutes, I've already given so much inspiration for the next year. I don't know how the rest of the virtually connecting sessions are going to inspire me. I want to let you guys go because I know you have to go.
Thanks,
Do you have any final words before you go?
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to stay virtual. We're going to stay virtual. I think we can keep talking
my
about
class
our reflection.
is going to get on with it today, if that's okay. And
Sure, no problem.
it was great to hear this and to hear your inspiring comments. And we'll catch up later while you guys are partying or hearing keynotes or whatever.
Take care.
Hey, thanks a lot.
Okay.
Here.
Bye. I can hang out for another like 15 minutes if anyone wants to stay. And obviously, if you have to go and you were planning to only be here for half an hour, that's fine as well. Does anybody have reflections, comments? I'm just going to make a comment before I open the floor. Sherry was in Cairo a few months ago, and she came to my class. And the way Heather was describing her workshop reminded me of what Sherry did with my class. And she did some really brief activities that really energized my students and really opened up their minds to a lot of different things. And they were playful. And so that, you know, the idea of the playground really reminded me of that. And now you guys, whoever wants to talk.
Sherry, can we hear more about what you did with Maha's class?
Janae, you wanted to say something?
Oh, yeah. Can we hear a little bit more about what you did with Maha's class? I'd be curious to know.
You know what I did? There were some, let me think. Now I have to think back. One was, actually it was part of a workshop that I did at Vancouver last year, which was also sort of play-based. But one thing that we did was I have a grid of 100 words, and it was called EdTech Hyperbole. And so that we had students had a limited amount of time to come up with, I think we did a few different rounds. So one was to come up with the most hyperbolic sentence, that sort of extols the virtues of an ed tech tool. Another one was to use the most words to describe a tool. And we sort of played around with slogans, and that sort of got people really talking, laughing, and really thinking about the messages that we get. So there were just really short, very communicative activities, and interesting just because we had this parameter, right? So we had this really limited grid of words that we had to use and work with. So I hope that gives you a rough idea.
Yeah, well, it sounds fun. Yeah.
It was well, there were activities. She broke the ice with playing music and getting them to start dancing. So, I mean, Sherry teaches physical education, right, in school. And so she got them moving. And this was very interesting because I think she's this American coming from Austria in an Egyptian context where a lot of the people are quite conservative. But the students loved it. There was only one student she's just gone through a traumatic experience, and I let her leave the class and I explained to Sherry why that was, that happened. But then everyone else really loved it. And in my final class reflections, they talked about that and how it energized them. And she also did this other exercise. I'm surprised she didn't mention it, where it was about listening, but it was about talking over each other. and that was the intention. Like you talk over each other and try to listen while you're talking at the same time. It was crazy. So that was also a lot of fun.
Yeah, it does sound difficult to do to AK's comment. And I think something I was struck by just listening to the folks at DPL were the ways in which they were thinking about how to define experiential learning, both within sort of the networking context and with the description of the activity, that experiential learning is not just about kind of being in a certain place or time, but thinking about how to use sort of your full sensorium, your full body to engage in thinking about how you connect with or understand new concepts. I'd love to think more about that. So that was what was striking to me today.
I want to add something. I was listening to the conversation, and interestingly, I knew Sherry's visit to Egypt. You know, I think Maha shared a photo on Twitter or something like that. And there are, as I told you, some people I knew from my network. And during this conversation, I was chatting at back channel with Autumn because it has been a long time that we didn't start any communication. And you know, that made me think how powerful networks anymore. And now I think, what is social? And maybe at this time we need to redefine some old concepts, old definitions. And probably, you know, our biggest mistake is to understand, you know, this big transformation from old definitions. What I said is quite different from the context, but I just want to add this as a note.
Vanessa, did you want to unmute? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Yes. Well, I just put the question down in the chat thing. I wasn't necessarily inviting myself up, but I'm here, so I'll talk anyway. I'm not in a classroom situation anymore. I'm retired, but I do a lot of information sharing across different platforms to very rather diverse groups. And sometimes I go, some of them I'm like, how did I end up here? But a lot of them seem to be connecting in ways they might not have expected themselves to. I've got local ones and then some academic ones with academic labor and adjunct issues. And I've moved into general sort of social justice warrioring, which I intend to own as mine and as a good title. Just like adjuncts did it with not liking the name of adjunct and then using it. But in the meantime, I go to these things and I think these are so interesting. And how would I apply this outside of the educational? And I know you're not being very formal when you're in labs and you're experimenting with stuff, but to somebody outside, like much of my audience, much of my readership or audience or whatever you want to call them are, it's an alien world. They don't have a lot of contact points. So mostly I try to see what I can do about kind of talking people to show up and see what it's like. But I think that some of this would be really good with continuing education in, like, for example, where you have this rural education deserts across the country. Learning and technology are very different here than in Denver. And this seems to me that the technologies you're using in the labs and the social media ones, besides the usual Facebook, would also be equally adaptable to this outside. But I'm just not really quite sure. I'm open for ideas, and maybe I'll get maybe lightning will strike at some point, and I'll go, I'll do this and see if it works. Is that how most ideas come down?
I'm seeing a lot of thoughtful faces. So
Yes.
I'm just encouraging folks to unmute and start talking.
Yes. I'm waiting.
Well, Vanessa, I think, when you say that, one of the things that I think about is, for instance, how did I get here? I mean, I'm a phys ed. I teach 4 to 11-year-olds how to throw, catch, kick, and so on, right? So, and I don't use a lot of tech in my classes. I use some, but my point is when I think about my networks, is that I find that my interests take me to a lot of places, and actually I enter a lot of rooms that way. And the point is that in each of those rooms, I'm making connections with people that then I'm drawing from. And I think if I can sort of help people see that it's a cool thing to be in a bunch of different places, that you can be outside of your discipline and still have a conversation and contribute, and that you may have some things to say, you may have some thoughts, or just listen. So that's been my experience. I definitely hear what you're saying in terms of sort of cultivating curiosity, in a lot of different contexts and for different people.
Well, a lot of it is, like leading horses to water. You can't make them drink.
Right.
Or to paraphrase Dorothy Parker. So I feel like I'm kind of, little connections get made here and there along the way, and people say, "Oh, I didn't know this was so related," and that's good. But I guess there's a cumulative effect going forward.
It's quite difficult to know what the spark is that gets us going, but once you get going and you start investing in it, it brings fruit. But there's usually a spark. For me personally, my spark was always that I was always curious and felt like my surroundings were never enough to feed my curiosity. And so online was always just an avenue for more. What Angela was saying about the world being smaller and bigger was amazing, because it's actually, I guess it's broader and deeper, but closer. I don't know. I mean, like it's the world is bigger, but you can reach it, I think.
Yes.
Is the feeling I get.
Well, actually, a lot of it is putting it out there and sort of making it available to people who might not have stumbled over it on their own. Bridge building, and see who tests the bridge out. And I do find surprising connections at times, sort of unexpected ones between networks. And sometimes it's just happenstance. You throw something out, and what's the reaction to it? Playing it by ear. I've got a local community page where I put sort of useful stuff for seniors and local events, and gotten involved in something sort of local political to try to get people out to vote. And because I offered to help and found myself doing a whole Facebook page by myself. But I look at it as in Northeast. Ramey may be the only one who can follow this one, but I'm in Northeast Colorado, Yuma. So it's the reddest part of Colorado, and I feel that cultivating other outlooks up here is like conservation work. There's endangered species that need saving, if that makes any sense. Unmute yourself, Remy. If you're going to say something.
I'm getting some feedback. I think I'm missing a few things, but unfortunately I have to run. It was really a pleasure seeing a lot of friends and familiar faces today, and I'm glad we could connect with DPL folks. I'm facilitating a workshop tomorrow, which actually everybody online can join as well. The link was shared in the chat, if you can still hear me okay. So doc tomorrow, annotate together.
Good
so
luck.
Anyway,
it's a great article,
everyone.
by the way. So
it's always nice to meet another person from Colorado too.
It's
We're
anyways.
representing the middle part of the United States. One rural and one urban.
It's really a pleasure to see everyone today, and I hope we all continue these conversations. Okay,
Thanks
everyone.
for coming,
Thanks.
Remy. Take care.
Take care.
Bye. Bye. Sue, you're someone who's really, really well known for your networking, and I think you've written about this and you've spoken about this. I wondered if you had something to say.
Yeah, you know me, I'm the listener. I tend to stay quiet on these live ones, and then just towards the end I have a spurry of conversation, which yeah, networking, I think it really thinking back, it's Twitter that's made a difference to my networking, because that gave me the opportunity to connect with people across the globe, have conversations, but I can sit back and have a think about the answer. You don't necessarily have to sort of interact in real time, which is where my comfort zone is. So, you know, I like to sort of dwell on things before I jump in. But I think one of the things that I've really got out of Twitter is the fact that we can share things in different ways. So, you know, you can get an insight by having conversations. You can get an insight because people are sharing each other's work. They're having a dialogue about publications that they've done. It's a forum where you can ask questions. You can jump in and start to answer questions, which actually is a really big conversation confidence booster, should I say, because suddenly you think, you know, somebody's asking that question or asking for some advice, and you think, oh, I can answer that, and you know, that makes a difference to that one person in a day.
Well, actually, locally speaking, I'd have to get a few more than just 2 other people on Twitter. 2 or 3, or you know, there's not many people here who use Twitter, so I've got some. They say, oh, well, I've got an account, but I've never used it. I need to learn how. And I said, well, just jump in and use it. And I'll start tagging you. And then but if they don't look at it, so that's kind of slow. I know that there's the younger population, there's probably a fair amount of Twitter uses there. But
it takes quite a lot of getting used to, really. And I think I always suggest people start to follow people that they find interesting, and you can sort of give some ideas if you've got a shared interest. Yeah, and then get them to look at the people that those individuals follow, and then start listening into the conversations. And if they
first they have to get on Twitter, period. If they're not on Twitter at all, it's kind of hard to use.
But much harder to get people to get on any kind of social media right now with all the issues that are there. And I like what Janae was saying this, I think, before we went online, I think, about how to responsibly, you know, and get like undergraduate students safely into this kind of space. I'm curious if Fuji has contributed. I know he's been on Twitter, and I know he also took the digpens, right? Thing.
Yes, I did. I just don't feel I have anything that I could really add, because for me, the digpens highlight was meeting you virtually, Maha, and that interaction. But we do plan to do it again with a different group of faculty. I know that we've brought a number of the people who've been involved with DPL to Davidson, and I've met them at different conferences and things like that. But I'm still exploring in terms of the full use of Twitter, or of social media in general. Mostly because I mean, when I've studied cyberspace before, it's more the negative aspects, the trolling, the things like that. Early on, especially when it was all listserv and everything based. So the question about digpens was essentially our local equivalent of DPL that we ran here at the college. Essentially, we have Sunday Richards, who's an instructional designer, make sessions for us, and we do many of the kind of interactions and use many of the tools that, like Hypothesis or whatever that you would learn at DPL. I think, again, I'm not a DPL.
I think that's not a bad way. I mean, I know both, so I think that's not a bad way of describing it. And I think what's cool about it is that it's an institutional form of getting you, sort of scaffolding this process for a faculty to get into this, so that then they can choose what they need to do with their students. I mean, a lot of times as faculty developers, we suggest faculty, oh, why don't you try doing this with your students? But if they haven't tried it themselves at all, they've never been taught this way. If they've never tried this with their students, some people use social media for their own professional development, or not usually, well, whatever, they use it for social reasons, whatever, but they can't imagine how to use it in a class. But when someone does it with them in that way, I think it sort of helps. And I understand, like, and I think it's really important to be aware of all the negative aspects as well. Like, not to be evangelical about social media. It's hard not to be sometimes because of how much it's empowered so many of us, especially thinking about it, all the other ways in which a lot of the people who are really high profile on Twitter are marginalized in other ways. But the same thing is to think about students and how it may be risky for them to use it, but at the same time, sometimes the person who's most at risk is also the person who has most to gain. And how do you make those choices? And there are things that we need to talk about together before we make those decisions. Janae, did you want to say something?
Yeah, just to add on briefly what you're saying, Maha, because what you're expressing here really resonates with me. And I teach a class once a year on digital identity management for our students, and the issue of representation and participation comes up really often. And part of it is just helping students navigate the sort of risks and rewards landscape that social media opens up. There's a lot of rewards once you find those communities and networks that really speak to you and that you can be a part of, and where you feel safe too. I think what's great about the digped community or edtech communities, they often do feel like safe spaces to kind of experiment and explore with some new ideas. Other spaces feel a lot less safe, and I of course can say this coming from some position of privilege here, of course, as sort of as a white woman. I get that I pass with a lot of privilege in certain kinds of ways on networks like Twitter, but that's just to say that I think we can kind of help our students map out those landscapes, maybe even creating, right? I have often students creating different sets of concept maps where they're seeing how networks are connected to each other as an activity to think through who are the people I want to talk to and why, and what level of participation do I want to have. But it's a challenge, and I think there's still a lot we have to navigate in terms of helping our students feel like they can enter in conversations safely and network productively without feeling like their identities are at risk.
Just as you were saying this, Janae, I was thinking about what you said about, the rewards and finding communities. And I was thinking about how I was really lucky that I didn't face a lot of hostility. And I don't generally face a lot of hostility, but when this started happening to me, sometimes I wasn't already safe. I had enough rewards and I had enough of a community that a lot of times that community could protect me or defend me. Or there's a few things, and I don't remember if Aris saw this, but there was a thing that was happening on Facebook where people were attacking me. And I remember several people were helping and responding, and sort of, at least even if I left that particular space because I wanted to avoid these kinds of discussions, I still felt like I came away with my community still intact. And I, those folks responded and they helped me out. It happens to me occasionally on Twitter. And again, that someone would either just respond to you publicly to defend you, or just privately support you and tell you, I'm here, do you want me to do something? Is there anything I can do to help? In the same ways, I guess it happens face-to-face as well. It's just that the risks are different and they look different, and how you respond seems like a different thing. But I've never had anything really extreme to me happen. I know some people have had really, really bad things like death threats and that have really forced them out or silenced them. So
it just sounds like you've had some incredible allies, like what you described, the behaviors of coming to your defense and supporting you publicly and privately. Like, that's really allyship at its finest. It'd be cool to think through how to share some of those examples with students who just show this is what being an ally really looks like.
Sherry has to leave. We can't hear you. Do you want to say something before you go?
I just wanted to say goodnight, and I hope to run into some or all of you in the course of this week, because I've signed up for at least a couple more sessions. So see you soon. Take care. Good night.
Good night.
Good night, and a pleasure to.
Nice to meet you, Sherry.
Nice to meet you too. See you.
And I'm afraid with that, I actually need to go as well.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
It's great
But nice to meet you all.
I know
Thanks
several
so
of you are signed up for other sessions, so it is going to feel like you're almost at DPL. So I'm looking forward to seeing some of you again. Okay, I guess I need to start going as well. Does anybody have any last things to say before we go? Shall I go off the air?
He's thinking.
Sorry?
AK looks like he's thinking.
Okay, go ahead, AK.
No, it's more of a
Topic
parting
thinkers.
thought. It was one of those expanding your network and the different ways that you can do it, or the different ways that you approach it. And one was person-based. So finding specific people on Twitter and following them and engaging with people. And one is event-based. So what we're doing here and meeting either familiar faces or new people, or the thing that came to mind for me was MOOCs, specifically connectivist MOOCs, and finding familiar faces there or meeting new people, as the case has been over the past 8 years. So just thinking about the different ways and pondering about the different ways of approaching network expansion.
I guess there's interest-based as well.
So like hashtags, sort of, or proxies for interest.
Yeah, interesting, or it could just be the search of the word. You know, I mean, through Twitter. You know, if you do the
word, yeah.
advanced search, you can find out all sorts of different things. So, yeah, people, events, and interests. I can see a Venn diagram coming together here.
We can make a presentation about this.
Yeah, what are the different ways that we could actually expand our networks? Just quickly, just as a side thought about, we were discussing about how we can engage students with social media, and one of the things that I've done sort of over the past couple of years is bring a few students together. But I wanted to call it a special interest group, but they didn't like that. They came up with their own name, which they called SMASH, which is Social Media for Academic Studies at Hallam. So they've got their own acronym and branding and all sorts going on. But what happened was we had just 4 students one year, and then one came into the next class because she didn't go out on placement, and we got some new people in. But what they started to do was explore how we can use, how they felt that they enjoyed using social media in the class. And little by little, because it's we only meet once a fortnight just for an hour. But involving your students is really kind of the parting comment is, you know, ask them what they would find useful, because I think, as with ourselves and our own CPD, there's lots of people standing on the sidelines thinking, this looks interesting, but I'm really nervous. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to say. I don't know where to go. And they just need a little bit of a helping hand to, yeah, jump over that hurdle.
Thanks for that, Sue. I love the SMASH acronym.
I want to add
did you want to say
something.
something? Go ahead.
Yeah. For the research that we conducted with Susan already gave a lot of spoilers, and it will be published very soon. I don't want to talk about more about details, but we found really interesting results about the influencer peoples on networks, like keynote speakers and their influence, how they shape the networks. I think there are some critical and interesting findings, but let's wait and see when it's published in Online Learning Journal by Sloan-C. And as a final remark, you know, I want to say just a simple sentence: in networks, we trust.
Cool. That actually sounds like a slogan for crowdsourcing, right? For like Wikipedia and that kind of thing. Okay. And Stu, take note that Fuji Sprite wrote you a note in the chat. So I'm gonna stop the broadcast now, but we can keep, I'll just keep the chat open for a little bit more in case people want to do something or people want to ask something to each other. But I'll let you know as soon as we're off the air. Thank you for watching, everyone. Thank you for joining us, those who are here.